Hi, what's up? I'm the Failed One, and today I'm going to be playing a VN called Lamento. I'll be honest, when I picked up this game, it had a really interesting storyline, and I really wanted to get into it. I had no idea it was going to be a yaoi. Being a girl, even though it's a yaoi, I can imagine myself, well, the main character as a girl, and continue on with my capturing the guy's heart. But I like yaoi anyways, so it really doesn't bother me that I have a guy trying to go after another guy. This game is also developed by Nitro Plus Chura, who also did Togai no Michi, and I didn't play the game for it, but I did watch the anime, and I found the story to be very, very interesting, even though it was in the shonen yaoi department. I found it easy to watch, even if you're not into yaoi. Although in the back of your mind you're like, wait, but it had a really interesting storyline, and I was hoping this one will follow through with it as well. So let's get started. Oh. Water is falling. Oh, there's a leaf. Even if the world killed you, I would not forget you. Oh, although I don't want to die. I have 2 hands and feet, with 5 digits on each. I stand and walk on my 2 feet. A god sang this song. Okay, so God has hands and feet like humans with 5 digits, and they walk on their feet. I thought it was going to be a riddle. I was going to say, human! It's a human. His wife was Rebecca, with wings, a tail, and ears. She laid a rainbow egg. Okay, yeah, because she's an animal, she would lay an egg. But the dazzling rainbow egg reflected too much sunlight, and it made Rebecca avert her eyes, and the egg fell. It hit a cloud and shattered. Oh no, the poor baby. Damn, that's what you get for being way too bright and way too cool. Although you didn't even have a chance to do anything because you're inside the egg. From inside the egg came a seed that was awoken by Rebecca's song. Aww. It bloomed and spread over the ground. Rebecca sang the song of the beginning. This is the story of the beginning. So I'm guessing the little egg became a flower, possibly, and just spread all over. Spread the happiness and joy. It was the song of the beginning being sung. The singing cat conjured a melody along with his words. His voice came like a brook of water and sometimes swelled like an intense flame. Cats who passed by were stopped in their tracks and chanted. They forgot the daily clamor and savored that intoxication for just one moment. The strings of the lute were plucked by his nails, crystal clear. The sounds it made poured forth and meshed with the song he sang, overflowing and sparkling around the poet. Cat sat down on the road and listened to the poet. Brilliantly, the earth seemed to fade, and they received the light that gently descended onto them. The remnants of the light drifted, glittering in the air. Voice, sound, light. Can fortunate meetings such as these really happen? Can such fluttering hearts truly meet by chance? A blissful smile graced the cat's lips. Let us savor it. Now is the time to share our joy. As the green scenery faded into the sunlight, the poet sang on. It has a fragile beauty before it is released to its end. The song of the beginning is about the sadness, courage, and ferocity of the world. Aw. Nice. Probably. Beyond the board. Of course, the song is going to be a bit reminder, so I don't speak Japanese either. That's us, by the way. I remember his name was Bardo. That's Rye. Oh. The grass looks nice. That's really nice grass. A world on the brink of death. This world is beautiful because everything is a lie. Because everything will die soon. It's a little sad way of looking at it, but okay. The forest in which the leaves grow thickly, vividly, the warm light that shines down, the colorful flowers that bloom everywhere beneath a clear blue sky. All of this is a lie. In red. The world is now attacked by the void. The end is near. So it is beautiful, for things shine their brightest before death. Thunder rent the sky open. An ear-splitting scream echoed through the village. From the sky, dark as night, rain poured down to the ground. The cats could only tremble and try to endure. Their ears flew back, their tails drooped listlessly, and their fur stood on end. Lamplight flickered in their rooms, casting creeping shadows on the walls and floor. On the village road, a cat, soaking wet, ran without cease. His quick feet splashed quietly in the water. He said nothing but where he was going and just ran onward. Well, I'm pretty sure there was no one there for him to say where he was going. A bag slung over his shoulder absorbed the water and became discolored. It began to droop heavily even though there wasn't much inside. His wet tail was also heavy. It was rare and unusual to be aware that it even existed, but now he thought about how troublesome it was becoming. What existed? His tail? Oh, his tail? The rain kept pounding. It chilled him to the marrow, and he wanted to return home soon, to dive into his warm bed and go to sleep. Lightning struck. When the sky shone bright white, the cat running to the village was silhouetted in black. The night moon was shrouded in darkness and could not be seen. The background images are really nice. Yeah. They're drawn really beautifully. The running cat finally reached the house, opened the door, and hurried inside. When he closed the door behind him, the sound of rain and thunder seemed to become distant, empty. The water dripping from his body wet the floor. The cat, Konoe, shook his head. scattering droplets of water to the walls and furniture. Oh, so we have our voice. This is our main protagonist, which is us. He has a voice. Nice. The room was dark. Konoe tossed his bag aside, not concerned that it had gotten everything wet. Okay, so we're looking through this as third person. I thought we were going to be first person and it would be I, but I guess this is one way to be able to look at him and his hotness. It's kind of cute, actually. It's his cuteness and his good lookingness. He drew a leaf out of a drawstring bag which stood by the door. Konoe put the leaf into a small dish on a shelf wherein a small puddle of water was contained. A hazy light spread through the room. It wasn't much being so dim, but at least it was no longer as dark. He wanted to use fire as little as he could. Konoe didn't like using fire often. Instead, he used a guiding leaf. The leaf stored up light from the day moon, and when soaked in water, weakly emitted that light again. Oh, that's kind of cool. On pitch-dark rainy days like these, the guiding leaves would shine. They guided the cats that lost their way, and hence got their name. Makes sense. His home was illuminated with a faint light. If 3 cats his size entered this room, it would be filled to capacity. So it's a pretty small home. Small, cozy house that we live in, or he lives in. A small shelf, a pot, and a barrel, each for food and water. There were only the bare necessities in this simple home. After he began to feel at ease again, Konoe finally laid down on his bed. The cloth was warm to the touch, and he began to purr instinctively. Oh, it's like a real cat. Just purr. Konoe removed his shoes and took the sword from his belt, then took off his coat and tossed it aside. Cats like Konoe, from a race called Ribika, no longer had much in common with their ancestors. Okay, so they changed, or either they changed physically, is what they're trying to say. Well, or I think it's more personality-wise. So I would say they became more humanized and more like how we live versus how his ancestors used to live, which I think was more cat-like, feline-like behavior. Although the Ribika no longer had fur on their bodies, like their ancestors did, they retained the need to groom the fur on their ears and tails, and the hair and skin of their arms. He carefully licked his damp fur. Okay, so it was my first idea, where they changed physically and looked more humanoid. More like a Nekomimi, which I like. With his rough tongue acting like a brush, Konoe groomed for a while. Still purring, his ears twitched in response to the thunder that occasionally echoed. The tip of his tail was wet and had begun to become a bit matted. Using his teeth, he untangled the fur, then he used his hands to carefully clean his ears. Just like a cat. While licking his fingers, Konoe turned his gaze to the window. Rain still poured outside. He'd heard a scream outside earlier. Whose scream was it? This time, someone had probably been eaten. Oh, damn! What's eating them? One by one, cats were disappearing. It was not the doing of devils or demons, but of the other cats of the village. It had become natural these days. So, they became cannibalistic? Was there a reason? Is there a disease spreading, or is it just mental stress? He muttered, trying to fend off those dark thoughts. There was not a thing anyone could do. This was the erosion caused by the void. No one could stop it. Oh, maybe it's affecting them mentally. Although we're not exactly sure what this void is, but it's definitely something that's changing them mentally. Konoe noticed the bag he'd thrown to the floor, and began to open it up with his long claws. The bag was wet and now began to shrink, so its contents were difficult to remove. He checked inside and contained nuts, grass roots, and medicinal herbs he'd obtained when he'd gone out to hunt. Just those kinds of things. Nuts and berries were favorite foods among cats. Well, they do technically like meat too. But, I guess, we're being vegetarian here. And their bodies could thrive even without eating for several days. Well, that's a big change from cats nowadays. Therefore, there weren't many times when a cat felt like a lack of food was troubling. That didn't mean that they didn't need to eat some meat, though. Okay, so they still ate meat. But now, hunting for meat was difficult. The forest and the village Karo, were being attacked by the void. Okay, so something that moves. This void. The void. It was such a mysterious phenomenon. Apparently, it had begun around the time Konoe was born. A young female cat who had entered the forest to gather herbs had first noticed the void. When she returned to the village, her hands were stained a deep red. Tears falling onto her cut fingers, she said, "I didn't pick the herbs. I didn't touch them. Something like a knife cut my fingers." Oh damn, they just started bleeding out of nowhere. At first, no one understood what she meant. There was a plant called blade grass, so called because its long, thin leaves could cut one's finger if you were not careful. Sounds plausible. The cats of Karo thought that she had tried to pick blade grass by accident. No one took her seriously. That really sucks when you try to tell someone something and you're like, no, it really happened, and everyone else is like, yeah, sure, you're not crazy. It really sucks when no one believes you. Who could have guessed it would become such a nightmare? Yep. Eventually, the other cats began to experience the same thing. Soon, every living thing in the forest became dangerous to touch. Every living thing. Oh, wow. Nothing physically seemed off about the forest, but the plants, the birds, the bugs, the butterflies, none could be touched even if they rejected the cats. As if they rejected the cats. Okay, that's really, really weird. As if matter itself had been rejected by reality. Cats were rejected by the earth. All breathing things in the forest seemed to no longer be compatible with them. Touching them caused pain and left cuts. Even the fruit they used to eat began to reject them, but it did not happen all at once. Like a sickness that destroyed a body from within, the void slowly crept from the edges into the center of the country of Sisa, cornering the cats. The void had not reached the center yet, but the area where Konoe was located was breathing its last breath. Oh shit. So it started like around where he lived. All he could do was search the forest for places untouched by the void to try and find some food. Mice and birds were now dangerous and constantly moving. Shit. Maybe escaping from a forest that had already fallen to the void. Cats who attacked them were paralyzed with pain. Some even died. The food stores soon began to run out. What could starving cats eat? Konoe broke that train of thought and regarded what things he'd gathered, then tossed them into a storage pot. He wasn't hungry, but he was thirsty, so Konoe moved to the barrel of water. He opened it up, dipped his head down, and lapped up some water. Oh my god. That's so cute. Just trying to imagine him going down and just licking some water from the barrel. That's really cute. Once he was done, Konoe covered the barrel again and began to stretch. His eyelids felt heavy. Being out in the rain this long would probably make him sick. He should rest. Konoe wiped his lips and returned to bed. I believe the Japanese thought, or the way that they think, is when you get wet in the rain, you're supposed to take a shower and then go to bed. You'd never stay wet. Oh, and make sure you dry up before you go to bed too, because they think that you're going to get sick. Konoe finished grooming and curled up under the blanket. Oh yeah, I guess that's his way of taking a shower, grooming himself and cleaning himself up. He breathed in the familiar scent of home, and his eyes closed. His tail curled around his body. Aww. For a moment, the scream echoed in his head, but he dismissed the thought. So it was out in the rain when he heard that scream. Konoe huddled down, alone, but he wasn't lonely. In fact, he was so used to solitude. Aw, today was cold. Maybe tomorrow would be bright and warm, and he could dry off. With these thoughts in mind, Konoe fell asleep. Just like he wanted, the next day was warm. He woke up, stretched out, and began to groom himself. Then he took his wet bag and coat and hung them up to dry in the light of the day's moon. He put on his clothes, picked up a nut to eat, and went outside to begin his daily routine by inspecting his territory. Cool. We get a map of the world. So this is where we are. Karo. On the southwest side of Sisa was the village named Karo. The male cats here were raised from birth to be strong fighters. But after the arrival of the voyager, surviving took all of their strength. The village seemed silent and dead. There were homes here and there, but it was rare to see cats outside. Everyone's probably cowering inside their houses, not wanting to touch anything because they don't want to be attacked by this void. They kept to themselves. Yeah, makes a pretty sad village where you don't see anybody. It's almost like a ghost town. Konoe finished looking over his territory and returned home. By then, the moon of light had already begun to set. Our day went by really fast. Sisa did not have a sun, just a moon of light and a moon of shadow. Oh, interesting. No one really knew why, and it had been this way since the dawn of the Rubiken race. According to a legend, the sun sank into the sea long ago. Sisa, where the Rubika lived, was surrounded on all sides by a sea that was colored golden, supposedly colored by the fallen sun. So the sun's disappearance turned into a legend, because I guess after the sun disappeared, the sea became that golden color, so it's like it really was taken up by the sea. Instead of a sun, they now had two moons, the moon of shadow and the moon of light. From the west, the moon of light rose and shone brightest at noon, while the moon of shadow rose from the east to look over the earth after dark. So only at noon we get this light, or we start getting light only at noon. So it had been passed down from generations to generation. When the sun fell into the sea, the world was shrouded in darkness. The wife of our god divided the moon in two so that it would always shine down on our world. The gods are trying to protect us, although they didn't try to stop the sun, apparently. Toucan was said to be the god who shaped this world. It was said that he was named so because he walked on legs like two sticks. So this Rubiken race don't. He was sometimes called Solid-Leg. The name of the race, the Rubika, came from the name of this god's wife, who was said to have the shape of a cat. The Rubika knew what cats looked like from reading the ancient texts left by the Toucans. Okay. Despite the difference in size, their ears and tails were the same, and so the Rubika called one another cats. But what Toucan looked like was something long forgotten. Only the name gave the cats a clue as to what he could look like. Konoe headed towards the village with the light of dusk warm on his back. Today, Tokino was supposed to come by. He was a peddler cat from Sisa's largest town, Ranson. About the same age as Konoe, Tokino helped his father with his work. His mother, however, had died shortly after she gave birth to him. Sad. Konoe's parents were also deceased. It's even worse. That's why he's used to being alone, being in solitude. His father before he was even born, and his mother passed of illness when he was young. So he's been alone all this time. He didn't have a close relationship with the other village cats, but that was fine by him. He hated the cats of this village. Yo, don't be an emo kid. No one helped anyone else. Everyone only looked out for their own interests. Okay, well, yeah, I wouldn't really like living in a village like that, with no community in it. Everyone's off on their own, like in the city. But he could live alone. So far, he didn't need the help of the other cats, and even when faced with death, Konoe didn't think he'd want it. But Tokino was different. Even when they first met, they got along well, as odd as that was to him. At least he had one friend. Tokino was carefree and easygoing, but Konoe was just the opposite. Maybe that could work out. Tokino always shared stories about Ransen, and Konoe, who never left Karu, enjoyed these stories. So it's our friend to the outside world, really. Wasn't he supposed to arrive soon? Konoe quickened his pace.
Oi!
Suddenly, a voice called out from behind him, straightforward and severe.
Mateo, Konoe!
It was a familiar voice. Konoe had a bad feeling about it. He tried to ignore it at first, but stopped when he heard a low growl. So I'm guessing it's not our friend. This would become troublesome. When he looked around, he saw the male cat he suspected. It was Sin. Well, that's an interesting name. Silhouetted black against the evening moon, the other cat lowered his ears aggressively. Uh-oh. So, Sin happens to be a very territorial cat. Territory? Konoe made his disdain from that term quite clear. Sin and Konoe's territories overlapped a bit. Sin and Konoe had fought over territory before. Sure, the territories overlapped, but it was to such a small degree that Konoe considered it trivial. Quarrels like these were not uncommon. Despite the hunger, the cat's fighting spirit remained alive and well. Or maybe it was exactly the hunger that made them so on edge. Sin narrowed his eyes, which gleamed with delight. The need to divert one's mind was disguised as a territorial dispute. It was rather depressing. Come to think of it, he always considered it that way. Besides, Tokino was probably waiting for him at the village entrance.
Soはいかねえ。俺はな、お前のそういう鼻っ柱の強いところをコテンパンに叩き潰してやらないと気が済まないんだ。
Oh. This guy just wants to fight us. Sin growled from the depths of his throat.
この野郎!
Sin threw himself at Konoe. Konoe jumped back quickly and drew his sword. Sin's blade aimed several stabs at Konoe's throat, but Konoe blocked these blows. So, Konoe is a very good fighter. While parrying Sin's blade with his own, Konoe gathered power at the left side of his body. He then lashed his left hand out to claw at Sin's chest. Sharp fingernails tore Sin's clothes and he staggered. This gave Konoe a chance to aim for one of Sin's arms, the one that held the knife. But right at the last second, Sin pulled away and kicked up his leg. Both of them separated, opening up some distance between them. The air between the two of them was scorching hot with tension. Sin shouted with intense, murderous intent, and the two of them stared each other down, growling. Before he knew it, Konoe's ears folded back, the hair on his body stood on end, and his pupils contracted to needles like slit. In times of extreme agitation, the pupils of Rubika narrowed. It was impossible to lie with eyes like that, no matter how much a cat may pretend to be calm. Sin cried out and charged forward at Konoe again. Konoe bared his fangs and brandished his sword. He dropped down low to avoid an attack, feeling a sharp wind at his cheek. At the same time, he twisted and aimed a kick at Sin's lower body. He knows his moves. Sin noticed his movement and began to shift, but Konoe was able to make his heel connect with Sin's side. Sin lost his balance and Konoe pushed off from the ground, pouncing. He kicked off the trunk of the tree to accelerate further, then pushed off towards Sin. Sin tried to stand up and jump back, but within another instant, Konoe's shadow was over him. Sin was caught, and a cloud of dust kicked up when he fell. Konoe pressed his struggling body down by pushing a knee against his chest, then dug his claw into Sin's shoulder and bared his fangs. In his right hand, Konoe brandished his sword. A frightened look entered Sin's eyes. Oh, you will die. Konoe stabbed his sword into the ground right beside Sin's face. Sin is very lucky that we are a nice guy, and we do not kill. Sin's eyes opened wide, and his mouth opened and closed voicelessly several times. In shock, are you? Konoe brought his face close enough to feel the downy fur of his opponent's ears and stared into Sin's eyes. I feel like this guy, Sin, doesn't learn his lessons. Like, he keeps coming back for a fight, because this has been going on for a while, right? And he just keeps coming back and keeps getting beaten by Konoe. And then he's like, okay, I get it. But then he comes back, he's like, yo, we're settling this again. That intense aggression of Sin's was gone now. His eyes were open, his pupils dilated wide. Konoe stood up and withdrew his sword from the ground. Sin panicked and stood up, his tail between his legs and his ears low. Oh, damn. Konoe began to walk away. He needed to hurry to get to the village entrance. Hey! Don't be kicking at orphans. They have feelings too. Okay, so unfortunately I'm gonna have to leave it here for now. I will see you guys in the next video. So far the story seems to be really interesting and it seems good. We got a idea of what our world is like. We don't know what's gonna happen next, but obviously we're trying to run away from the void. Probably gonna go save the world or something as well. So I will see you guys next time. Bye!